When you hear Genghis Khan, you probably picture a brutal conqueror, a ruthless warlord who built an empire on mountains of skulls. But what if I told you that's only half the story? What if the most enduring legacy of the man who built the largest contiguous land empire in history wasn't just his army, but his surprisingly modern economic systems? This is the untold story of the organizational genius you weren't taught about in history class, and the brutally effective business lessons that are still being used to conquer industries today. Forget the old image of a barbarian obsessed with loot. The real story is far more complex and, frankly, far more brilliant. Genghis Khan was a nation builder and a pragmatic innovator. He didn't just seize territory, he built a system. He understood that military might could win you a battle, but only economic power could sustain an empire. To build his continent-spanning empire, he couldn't just rely on swords and horses. He needed a set of rules, ruthless, practical, and effective rules for generating and managing wealth on a scale the world had never seen. He took warring tribes and forged a nation. He turned dangerous, lawless lands into a thriving marketplace by establishing a series of wealth-building systems that were centuries ahead of their time. These aren't just footnotes in a history book, they're a masterclass in strategy and power. And today, we're deconstructing Genghis Khan's playbook to reveal 3 of his most powerful wealth rules that transformed a nomadic tribe into an economic superpower. It's time to meet the architect behind the warrior. Before Genghis Khan, the world pretty much ran on one simple, deeply flawed idea: birthright. Power was inherited, not earned. Armies were led by aristocrats, governments were run by nobles, and your lot in life was sealed the moment you were born. Genghis Khan saw this not just as unfair, but as a terrible business model. So his first, most foundational rule was to shatter that system and replace it with a radical concept: a pure meritocracy. This wasn't just a philosophy for him, it was strategy born from brutal experience. Born as Temujin into a minor clan, he was betrayed, abandoned, and even enslaved by the same aristocratic system he would later tear down. Those early years taught him a vital lesson: loyalty and skill were worth far more than a fancy family tree. He started judging people on what they did and how well they did it, not who their father was. In a society built on tribal connections, this was revolutionary. So, he built a new kind of organization. He deliberately broke up the old tribal structures, mixing warriors from different clans into new units. This masterstroke did 2 things at once. It destroyed old, petty loyalties and forged a new, unbreakable loyalty directly to him. His administration became a magnet for talent. He promoted leaders based on pure skill, proven results, and unwavering loyalty. The son of a blacksmith could become a general if he had what it took. Think about the story of Jeeb. During a battle, an enemy archer fired a shot that killed Genghis Khan's horse right out from under him. After the battle, Khan demanded the archer show himself. A man stepped forward and admitted it was him. Instead of executing him, Genghis Khan saw incredible skill and courage. He didn't see an enemy, he saw a high performer. He recruited the archer on the spot, named him Jeeb, which means arrow, and turned him into one of his greatest field generals. That was the meritocracy machine in action. Khan surrounded himself with the best and brightest, whether they were Mongol warriors, Chinese siege engineers, or Persian administrators. He actively sought out experts from the lands he conquered, using their knowledge to run his empire more effectively. This system created a hyper-competent team that was fiercely loyal and ruthlessly efficient. It ensured the best person was always in the right job, maximizing human capital in a way no one had before. The return on investment was staggering. It all came down to a simple business truth: if you want to build an empire, you don't bet on pedigree. You bet on talent. Once Genghis Khan had his dream team, he turned his attention to the infrastructure of wealth. He knew conquering land was one thing, but making it profitable was a whole different game. His second ruthless rule was to weaponize trade by creating the largest and safest free trade zone the world had ever seen. Before the Mongols, the famous Silk Road was a mess. It was a patchwork of dangerous routes, crawling with bandits and greedy local lords who'd tax you into bankruptcy. A merchant setting out on a journey was basically gambling with their life and their money. Genghis Khan saw this chaos as a massive opportunity. He realized that the flow of goods was like the flow of blood. If you control the arteries, you control the body. His goal wasn't just to use the Silk Road. It was to own it. This kicked off the era known as the Pax Mongolica or the Mongol Peace. But don't get it twisted, this peace was bought with the sword. The Mongol army systematically wiped out the bandits and warlords who preyed on caravans. They established a level of security so total that it was said, a maiden carrying a gold nugget on her head could wander safely across the realm. This safety wasn't just a perk, it was the foundation of his economic strategy. It radically lowered the risk of doing business, and trade volume exploded. But security was only half the battle. The other half was logistics. To manage this vast network, Genghis Khan created one of the most brilliant systems in history, the Yam. The Yam was essentially a medieval pony express on steroids, a relay system with stations every 20 to 30 miles, stocked with fresh horses, food, and shelter. An imperial messenger could cover up to 200 miles in a single day, a speed that was simply unheard of. This network was the internet of the 13th century. It allowed for the rapid spread of information and military orders. But its economic impact was just as huge. Merchants with a special passport, a golden tablet called a pesa, could use the Yam system, giving them secure lodging, protection, and fresh horses. This turned unpredictable, months-long journeys into scheduled, efficient trips. The results were transformative. The secure Mongol Empire became a massive conduit for goods, ideas, and technology. Silk and spices flowed west, gold and medicine flowed east. It was a new era of interconnectedness, kick-started by Mongol policy. Genghis and his successors knew how to sweeten the deal. They lowered taxes on merchants, and his son Ogdi was even known to pay traders double or triple their asking price, a clever move to attract even more commerce to the Mongol court. This wasn't about a love for free trade. It was a calculated strategy for control. By protecting trade, the Mongols could tax it. By controlling the Yam, they controlled the flow of information and goods. Genghis Khan turned a dangerous dirt path into a superhighway of wealth, and he was standing at the toll booth. If you're finding these lessons from the past as fascinating as we do, help us fortify our own channel. Hit that like button and subscribe to Wealth Saga. Your support is the tribute that fuels this empire. You have a killer team and a logistical superhighway pouring cash into your empire. You have to make that money work for you. Conquest brought in enormous plunder, gold, jewels, and goods. But treasure sitting in a vault doesn't grow. This led to Genghis Khan's third and maybe most sophisticated rule, creating an ancient form of venture capital known as the Ortoq. The Ortoq system was a genius solution to the problem of risk and capital in the medieval world. The word itself means partner, and it was essentially a state-sponsored partnership between the Mongol elite and merchants. Here's how it worked. A Mongol noble, often from the imperial family and frequently the powerful women of the court, would provide the capital to a merchant for a long-distance trade caravan. But this wasn't just a loan. It was a true partnership with a brilliant understanding of risk. In most of these deals, the Mongol investor acted as a limited partner. If the caravan failed because of a storm or bandits, they absorbed the loss. Think about that. The immense risk of trade was socialized. The loss was taken by a wealthy noble who could afford it, not the merchant who would be ruined. But if the caravan was successful, the profits were split at a prearranged ratio. This was, in essence, venture capital for the 13th century. The Mongol elite were the VCs, putting up the seed money and taking on the risk. The merchants were the entrepreneurs, providing the expertise and doing the work. The system perfectly aligned the interests of the state and the merchants. The empire wanted more trade, and the Ortoq partnerships directly funded the people who could make it happen. This created a powerful feedback loop. Conquest brought in plunder. That plunder was reinvested into trade caravans through the Ortoq system. Successful caravans generated huge profits, creating even more wealth for the Mongol elite to reinvest. It was a self-perpetuating engine of wealth creation. This system allowed the Mongols to turn the static spoils of war into active, productive capital that fueled growth across the continent. They weren't just taking wealth, they were systematically investing it. So what's the takeaway from the Khan's playbook? First, build a meritocracy machine, get the best people, period, and make them loyal to the mission. Second, weaponize trade and logistics. Control the arteries of commerce, make them safe and efficient, and you'll dominate the flow of wealth. And third, systematize investment. Create a system to deploy your capital, manage risk, and turn static assets into a perpetual growth engine. The story of Genghis Khan is a powerful reminder that history's greatest empire builders were often its most creative economic thinkers. He was a visionary who saw the world not just as a map to be conquered, but as a system of resources to be managed and assets to be deployed. He built systems for talent, logistics, and investment that were so robust they became the economic bedrock of his empire. The man we remember as a warlord was also a pioneer of large-scale logistics and investment. The principles he used, betting on talent, dominating logistics, and systematically investing capital, are just as powerful in today's boardrooms as they were on the steps of the 13th century. But now I want to hear from you. Which of Genghis Khan's wealth rules do you think is most relevant today? Let me know in the comments below. And if you want to keep uncovering the financial secrets of history's most powerful figures, make sure you subscribe to Wealth Saga. The saga of wealth continues.